I love my little girls more than anything, and I said to myself, oh no, don't say that. But I had underestimated him. He went on, I would
I'm dropping things all over the place. Let's see if that still works. It probably does. You can probably hear me. Everything's probably okay. Do I look disheveled? I would prefer to call it casual. It is, after all, Sunday. It's a very special Sunday broadcast of this show. I know what you're thinking. You're probably wondering why the show didn't come out on Friday and why I look so thin and gorgeous. Well, let me tell you. The reason is that I threw up about half my body weight over the weekend. And as anybody who knows me well will know, I'm very happy about that. But I do apologize for the missing the show on Friday. But we're here. We're still here for you. This week, I ought really to apologize, guests, because they were around for hours before it was clear that I couldn't be on camera for more than 10 minutes without vomiting. There's just one problem. One of them should be in jail, and the other isn't even human. Joining me this week are representatives from two categories of people that we don't hear from that often. They are James Carey, who is a self-avowed communist, and Rodger Sanchez, who is a libertarian. Now, as you'll probably have gathered, the person who isn't even a human being is, of course, the libertarian. We're going to hear this evening exactly the sort of thing that people are starting to get sick of on the internet. You'll be glad about that. But with a twist, we're going to be hearing this evening on some big life questions. It's Christmas, and what people are really thinking about, let's say the big questions, faith and family, love. They're thinking about their priorities for the next year. Christmas is really, in the Christian calendar, the only time you get enough time off in a solid block that's not an exhausting family vacation to really think about where you want your life to be headed and the sorts of things that you believe in. Not helped by the hangovers, but it is what we do at Christmas nonetheless. So we're going to be having some two people on who are both, of course, wrong about absolutely everything, but I'm hoping that they will be wrong in each other's direction in an amusing fashion. And therefore, please join me in welcoming James and Rodger.
Hello.
Hi. Hello. How are you, love? Now I'm going to guess. I'm going to cover up your names, and I'm going to guess which one's the communist. I'm covering
it's the thin one.
I'm covering. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. Well, that's 1.4 communism. Well done. Good. Now, making fun of both of you a little bit, but we are going to have a nice to see if there are any points of contact whatsoever between you. That will be exciting. Let's first of all start with, what would you say is if you don't know very much about the person you're up against, and you just know that they are a communist or that they are a libertarian, what's the first thing that pops into your head? What's the first assumption you have about the other person? And we'll start with Rodger.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's the first assumption when I talk to a communist would be a confusion between the idea of the people and the state, that the state actually represents the people. I don't think that's true. I think there's a distinction between the state and the people, and that's actually a class division in and of itself. So I don't think the state necessarily is the living embodiment of the people, and I think history proves otherwise.
So quite a dorky answer, that. Could that be one of the reasons that people think libertarians are all nerds on the internet?
Potentially, I suppose. I mean, I don't really know what to say to that. As
I'm
long as
teasing you. You can
oh, I'm fine
smile
with it.
because I'm politely teasing you, as I am wont to
Okay.
do with libertarians. All right, James, what's the first thing that you think when you hear that somebody is a libertarian?
Yeah, pedophile.
That's 2 points for communism. Okay. I didn't tell you, but I'm going to be judging you and ruling at the end, and who has impressed me the best. And it won't just be for making me laugh, but I sort of want to end it there, really. If this wasn't someone else's network, I would have ended the interview right there. Okay, sorry, but give me another different answer. And while you're doing that, I'm going to turn my printer off.
I just see an implausible set of ideas. I see the idea of like the early liberalism market economics as I see where we're at right now as an inevitable end result of those economics. And I feel a reset on liberalism only brings us back to where we are today.
Right.
And that is typically the base argument I have with libertarians in general.
So I suppose, although you two are at what you might regard as the extremes of left and right, your critiques of each other seem to be boiling down to fairly conventional analysis, which is one side is callous and the other is confused. People. I think if people are being generous of spirit, they'll say that these lefties, they're well-meaning, but they don't get this. And if people are generous to libertarians, which you should never be, they will. Don't worry, you got some coming too, you other one. If they are being generous to libertarians, they might say that they turn a blind eye to too much human suffering for comfort. All right. Well, that's a good start, and I think that places you two in good opposition to one another. I want to just tell the audience a little bit more about who the two of you are, and then we'll sort of launch into it and have a chat. Now, James, it says here that you write for Geopolitics Alert, which is has a decent following. It is a very left-wing, you might say, very conservative news outlet.
I don't think it's left-wing. I think we're anti-interventionist just the same as you are. I think
you're probably right about that, but we'll get to that in a minute. I suppose the main question I had when I heard that we had successfully booked you is, why are you breaking ranks with other people in your kind of nexus, other people in your ecosystem, and having the bravery or stupidity to come on right-wing podcasts and talk to and debate people and have conversations? Are you in danger of losing your leftist card for that?
As somebody like you who's on their own should know, what are they gonna fucking do to me? Who gives a fuck? Who gives a shit, man? What are they gonna take my website or my podcast? Fuck them. They can't. So it doesn't matter to me, and because I find most of it pointless. I find like the street fighting with Antifa pointless. I find the online fighting with leftists over like whose pronouns are what pointless. I find it all tedious and stupid.
I can tell you're going to want to get into some of the more serious stuff, particularly about international relations later. So we'll get to that. Now, Rodger, you're actually vice president of the Republican Party of the Libertarian Party in Maine, and you host a weekly podcast called Echo Chamber. You have debates on your show. What sort of trouble have you had booking leftist guests?
Very, very much trouble. I hear the line, well, I don't want to talk to that other person because it gives them a platform quite a bit. So it is rather difficult to get leftists on. So I'm always delighted.
It's like he has 300,000 followers on Twitter and you have 20,000. Like, what are you talking about? What favor are you doing this guy? Yeah. But you are battling on nonetheless. And I thanks for showing up, both of you. Now, I owe Rodger a question. I'm not unaware of this. I know people have in the back of their minds, oh, I see, you got 2 questions. I haven't made up my mind yet. It is 2-0 on the basis of, the introductory preamble, but there's all the time in the world to pull it back. We're going to move on to some more substantive questions now. I'm going to ask you both to have thoughts on this, and Rodger, you can ask for extra time or your extra question whenever you like.
Sure.
First of all, I suppose the main thing that most people the biggest criticism that I would hear about both of your respective, self-identified philosophies is, yeah, it will never happen because too many things need to happen first in order to bring it about. So you both probably have good answers to that. Let's keep them brief. James, what would have to happen for communism to be implemented in the United States?
Absolute dread and misery, but I see that on the horizon at some point. That may be the same answer from my opponent here, but absolute dread and misery.
No, well, you see how clever I am, don't you? So you're beginning with that acumen of yours to start uncovering the real reason for the interview. No, I'm kidding.
I don't see any break in the liberal superstructure anytime soon. I see what's going on now.
Are you committed? This is one of the things that's interesting about people who are on the political fringes. Are you committed to an essentially fruitless life? Are you committed to a life in which you know you're going down because you consider it to be gallant and necessary? There's a sort of Thermopylae feel to what you just said. It's like, well, fuck it. Maybe we'll take a few of them out on the way.
I look at it this way. I'm currently on the losing team of a battle that's going to go on for fucking ever, dude. I don't know.
So you're just going to keep losing by more and more.
I'm willing to admit the thing is this shit goes on forever. Something collapses and something else comes. It happens.
Rodger, you're on a losing team, or really a losers team. What is the reason for the reputation of libertarians? Because I like making fun of. I mean, I used to describe myself as one briefly until I met a few online. There's a stereotype about libertarians, isn't there? And unfortunately, you can't really claim that it's unfair because we see people streaking naked across the stage at your national political conventions. And we also see the candidates you put up for office who are terrifically unserious people. What do you think is responsible for the bad reputation that libertarianism has? Because although I've drifted from it into a more sort of conventional, traditional, like family values conservatism myself, I certainly see the virtue in it, and I once, was really keen on most of it. So I'm not hostile to the principles, but what is it that's garnered these apparently innocent logical principles so much ridicule? What do you think that boils down to?
I think it's the suppression of the media. You mentioned, Brian, I think it was James Weeks who ran across Nick at the stage. That got lots of airplay. Our candidates sure can't. They can't get on the debate stage. They can't express their ideas, even though Gary Johnson got over 4% of the country voting for him. So I think it's media suppression. I think it's the media is a tool of the state. And they don't want our ideas to get out because then people would take them seriously and we'd win.
Okay.
That sounds like an excuse we'd make.
Well, again, you're beginning to see. James, it occurs to me that communist revolutionaries never imagine themselves as the ones who will be out, tilling the soil and working in the factories. They always seem to have they all seem to have a slightly different idea for themselves in mind, even if they have quite prescriptive and exhaustive plans for everybody else. After the Great Communist Revolution, where would you be serving in society?
No, I'd be dead, most likely.
We're speaking in hypotheticals, James. That means something that isn't real, but that you take your mind and you place it in a brief imaginary universe you have created, and you talk about what that looks like.
What, in a perfect utopia? I wouldn't.
Yes, your communist utopia. Let's say after Trump, 4 years of Biden, and people are like, oh my God, we got this wrong. We got this so wrong. Biden is so exciting, and we want to go further. We want to take it further. And let's say within your lifetime, the Communist Party of America, it controls all three branches of government and occupies all three positions in the executive. What is your job?
Well, if I'm going to keep paying fucking taxes, I want healthcare. I want the right to housing. I want the right to a fucking education. I want universal fucking human rights that keep you alive and intelligent, guaranteed to all people. I want.
So, what does that mean? So you would yourself, you'd be in government, perhaps? Would you yourself be in government, perhaps?
No, I fucking wouldn't do shit. I don't know what the fuck I would still.
You wouldn't do anything. You see, it's rare. It's rare that you hear an admission that unreflexively innocent and honest Well, I want a communism because I don't want to do anything, and I want all this shit free from other people. Yeah, well, thanks for that. I'm afraid that's 1 point for libertarianism.
Well, no, I'd still be in the working class. I'd still be working.
Okay. Now, there are lots of different lenses through which to view the great civilizational challenge that we're currently facing, where we have one group of people, one amorphous blob, who want to tear out the Western canon in universities, who want to enlarge the size of the government, who want to engage in social engineering, and another half who don't, although it's sometimes less clear what they do want. Do you think that the battle between you two represents the kind of struggle for the soul of Western civilization, or is the real heart of the battle somewhere else? And we'll start with you, Rodger.
I do. I mean, I think that every communist, every Marxist, believes they're doing something good. They want to bring about egalitarianism. I just think that they're confused. But at the end of the day, I think civilization is based on trade. It's based on voluntarism, and savagery is based on war. And essentially, communism is a system based on war. If I'm in a communist system and I want to say no, what does the state do to me? In a capitalist, libertarian civilization?
Well, they do that in your capitalist system. If I don't pay my taxes, I go to jail. If I have a contract with somebody and they renege on the contract, there's every chance I could be, left out of pocket, and then they could sue me for something frivolous. And in fact, in America, which is, a country that is pretty free and easy with business legislation, what we've actually garnered here, what we've built here, is a country in which the rich and powerful get what they want and everybody else has to hope for the best, because capital is what determines justice.
Well, I would say here to your first point about taxes, that's why I'm a libertarian. We need to get rid of so many of those. But if you go into a contract,
not all of them, how are you going to pay for all of the weed and BitTorrent servers in a libertarian state if you don't have taxes?
That's a good point. Anarcho-capitalism is wrong because existentially we need to have some taxes. My opponent will be delighted to hear that I believe we need to have a government paid for by stolen taxes through violence. There needs to be some of that, but substantially less than what we have now. And I think that actually...
Well, you're not really a libertarian then, are you? You've been missold. You're mislabeling yourself. You should tell the people of Maine that you do, and you should tell the people of Maine, I'm sorry, I do in fact believe in the non-consensual infliction of taxation at the barrel of a gun. Sir, you're a fraud. Good. Well, I'm glad to hear you're sane. Thank you. Glad to hear you're vaguely sane. Maybe we'll get something from the other one soon. Same question to you, James.
Okay, so can you repeat the question here? I got lost.
Ooh, 1 point to libertarianism. Oh dear. Okay, we'll move on. I don't know if that helped. I don't know if that helped you or hurt you. That little flex. We'd have to pay much closer examination to the musculature to know if that helped you or hurt you. I'll find out. I'll take a look later, and I'll revise my scoring if need be next week. Which philosophy, James, out of the two of you, is worse for the environment? Because I'm a conservative, as you know, and we are not often self-described conservationists, but we're never environmentalists, but we are sometimes, like to think of ourselves as conservationists, since we do, after all, live in the countryside, and you guys don't, and love it, and I think we're more in touch with people and animals generally. Which of your philosophies is worse for the environment?
I would say mine, at least, even under some type of even under a right-wing government, some type of legislation to actually protect, or some type of state planning to protect resources when building massive projects and things like that are, those are allocated even by right-wing governments. Whereas a libertarian government, I don't know, is it against the NAP for you to poison a river or some shit like that? Because it doesn't seem like it if you're doing business and if you have the money and the power. Fuck, if you have a private militia, who's to stop you from dumping shit in the river?
It's a complicated question for me because there are things about, for instance, this planet that once they're done, they can never be undone. And if you have enough money and few enough regulations, you can do it. And should we, as responsible citizens, participate in those kinds of forms of government where one of us, because he gets lucky, or because he works hard either, is able to kind of like destroy large bits of the planet, with no recourse, having not technically broken the law. But on the other hand, I sort of think if you've got 200 million in the bank and you want a surface-to-air missile, why the fuck can't you buy one? I'd like to buy one. If I had enough money, I would buy one. And I sort of think, like, who the fuck has the right to tell me I can't buy one? So I get that's why I know I'm right somewhere on the right still, at least. But yeah, no, I think you're probably right about that. I think you probably are. Rodger, I will get you to talk about each other for a second.
Sure.
Why is communism, which is, I always thought, having actually read Marx, which most of these guys haven't, about economics, about money, become about race and gender and about interpersonal relations, about policing people's interactions with one another in the social realm? Why do you think that's happened to communism?
That's a good question. I think it's just a scam. I think that communism is actually that's a great weapon against racial minorities. Look at the Uyghurs in Western China. Look at the kulaks in the Soviet Union. I think it's just a ploy to get disenfranchised people to collectivize and get their votes. But in the end, we see what happens. In individualism, it's the prize to be an eccentric, to be different, to be who you are. But equality is the enemy
let me
of
tell
diversity.
you. Not anymore. Maybe for a while. Okay, James, do you have thoughts on that? Because your movement now is really associated entirely with social engineering, isn't it?
No, listen, I don't. What happened to me is the 60s, honestly, when postmodernism took over the left.
So the 60s were bad for the left and bad for communism. That is what we would call a hot take. Please carry on.
It became an intellectual, middle-class, college-based movement with like the hippie revolution bullshit and stuff like that. It became a very middle-class movement of like these professional children who went back to college after the Vietnam War was over.
I like this guy. I'm sorry, Rodger. I think I'm going to give him a point for that. All right. No, I think your analysis is correct there. How would you go about fixing that? Because now you have this, and I agree with your class analysis, because I've made the same one, about this sort of, I would say, pseudo-intellectual middle class of people who are kind of smart, but not super smart. Like dumb enough to fall for it, Dumb enough to buy into the mantras. How would you go about fixing that? Because you want to give more people college. You want to send even more people, don't you, to precisely the institutions that have destroyed your own movement. So what are you going to do with that?
I border on completely abolishing universities and free education. It's hard for me to tell.
I mean, it's quite a big difference, isn't it?
I do think that the idea of the elite universities, where most of this garbage comes from, crush them. The Ivy League, or when you have like Harvard having like segregated proms and shit like that. No, smash that bullshit. That comes out of the elite institutions.
Would you institute class quotas in place of racial quotas?
It wouldn't necessarily be a class quota. It would be access to like a legitimate education that's applicable to real world skills for the working class.
No, but that's not that wasn't quite what I was asking. Even in your system where you've smashed the citadels, even if it was all like state colleges, you're going to have state colleges that are really good for particular subjects. Something might emerge as the center for, I don't know, robotics. Those places will be very much in demand. And if they are, how do you choose who gets them and who doesn't? Would you have a class-based quota system?
Providing a sufficient primary school education that actually picks out the talent best suited for these institutions. I mean, if you're going to...
I see. So it would be meritocratic, but it would... Okay. Fair enough. That's a good answer. All right. Rodger. Would you say the world is closer to toppling into communism or toppling into libertarianism? And I use the metaphor of falling on purpose. But it's okay. We're going to love each other by the end, I promise.
Sure.
Are we closer to one pole or the other?
We're definitely closer towards socialism. I mean, socialists work. Sometimes violence does work. And unfortunately, in reality, when people band together and use weapons to advance their ideas, as they do in the state, it gets things done. So I got to give them credit. Yeah, the violence of the state is moving forward.
Come on. Are the problems that we're having in the world because of too much communism, or is it too much free market globalism?
Free market, that's way too much regulation. I think communism is such a bad deal for workers. Because of regulation, an individual or an ex-felon or someone who's homeless can't just go out and offer their services. They get funneled into working into jobs like Amazon and Walmart, things of that nature. So it's actually government regulation and taxation that's keeping the working class down.
So you basically want people to get a clean slate when they finish their sentences. So as an employer, I have no right to know if someone's a felon. I shouldn't even ask. Or there's no rules about asking. So people could represent themselves however they wanted, really, because there's going to be no one there to back it up if it doesn't work out. I mean, this is a disaster for business owners.
I think that could be consensual. You can go to a business owner who maybe doesn't care. And if someone doesn't care, that's their right to hire a scumbag if they want to. But if they do care, they can say, if you'd like to work in my business, we require a background check. And in that case, it's voluntary and consensual.
Quite a lot of government agencies involved in a background check. So you're going to keep open the FBI. You're going to keep open some kind of Department of Works, or you'd have to keep open. You want taxes, so you're keeping the IRS open. Most of the, I mean, what is going under your libertarian government?
There needs to be a police force. There needs to be some sort of.
That's half the federal budget you've just put back.
Yeah, that's it. We're going to need that. But here's another thing, too. And I even think my opponent might agree with me here. So many of the felons are drug users. They did coke. They did heroin. Who cares about that stuff? I understand someone wants to make sure that their employee isn't an axe murderer or something to that effect. But if we scale back a lot of these things.
Have you ever run a business? Have you ever owned a business?
Yes. Not successfully. But I have.
Well, I'm beginning to figure out why. Are you out of your fucking mind? Like, I don't care if someone who I employ takes cocaine. Of course I care. And it's not because I'm morally judging their lifestyle choices. It's because they will be less reliable. And they are less reliable.
But if
they don't fucking show up.
If you care, that's fine. But what if I didn't care? What if I didn't care?
Well, apparently
why shouldn't I be able to hire someone and lift them out of poverty?
I mean... It's not quite the same thing, but all right, okay, fair enough. Let me ask you again, Rodger. Do the communists on the left have the right idea about conservatives, Republicans, libertarians, about their enemies? Do they know who they're fighting? Do they have a good idea of who? I mean, you and I kind of are a little apart, as perhaps obvious by now, but fundamentally moving in that direction, and he is fundamentally moving in that direction. Do they really know where we sit on things in general? I mean, not this one, because this one seems to actually have conversations. He's one of the good ones. But do most of his friends have the foggiest fucking clue, like what Republicans and conservatives actually believe?
I think they do, and I think Marxists and communists are very good at problem identification. I mean, homelessness is a problem, lack of education, these are all real problems. I just think they fuck up on the solutions.
It's not very difficult to spot some of these problems, is it? I mean,
fair enough. I think that's a good point. Right, correct. So I think the things they talk about are real problems, but unfortunately, their answers to those problems just make the
Is systemic racism a real problem?
I think that tribalism is natural in humanity, and if we're all guided together, then certain cliques are going to fight over others. So I think it's very important for the governments to be decentralized so that certain groups can't take control of each other.
Is that a suggestion that perhaps you might nod along to the idea of systemic racism? You think that's probably a thing?
I think it can be a thing on many sides, to quote a very intelligent man. But yeah, absolutely, I think it can happen in certain areas. So I think freedom of association. If you don't like where you live, if you don't like the people, go ahead and go with another group of people and freely associate. And as with everything, freedom solves the problem. The problem is forcing people to live together who hate each other. Why does that make any sense?
Yes, and I think I've been a bit soft on you so far, James, but I got to ask you, I mean, the reason that so many people do hate each other is your friends, the people who have stoked racial division for the last 30 years really fucking hard. And now we're at the stage where people even uttering the phrase race war, which is the most horrifying thing imaginable. Where did the left lose grip on the making its economic argument and instead trying to just just respond how you want, I guess, because you guys created this horrible situation.
They framed the argument in terms of identity, and it was all about individual instances that they would pick out of the media and things like that. They framed all of these things, and to me it's not Marxist because it's very individualist the way everyone picks out their own identity now. There's a million different identities in the Marxist movement.
Well, because you want people to only have one identity, which is as a dutiful citizen of the state, right?
Yeah, citizen, yes. It's like the French said. But yes. But
quoting the French, apparently in support of something. I'm afraid that's a point to libertarianism. I'll give you a choice. You can either have a point.
He's getting food from you.
You can have a point docked, or he can get a point for quoting the French approvingly. What would you like to do?
Listen, you can do whatever you want.
James, you have to choose.
Dock him a point.
Okay, fine. That's the right answer. Okay,
so I get a point for docking myself a point?
No, you didn't dock it. No. You could dock either. Wait, no, you said dock him a point. You bamboozled me. You bamboozled me. I did it on my.
I get a point. I get a point for this.
Rodger. You do get. I'm going to give him his point back, but I'm also going to give you a point for bamboozling me.
Yeah, so thank you.
Mother. Sorry, carry on.
So anyway, the issue is to me.
They're sneaky, aren't they? Sneaky.
It's true. You gotta watch out.
Well,
hush, not your turn. Here. James, carry on.
So the issue is that the individualism has leaked into Marxism to the point where, like, it's not just this is my identity, but like this is my experience of oppression. Like I have ADHD and therefore I'm disabled. And
lived experience is a fundamentally right-wing individualist thing. I agree with you on class. Yeah, exactly. I agree with you on that. So we've got a communist who doesn't believe in identity politics and a libertarian who does believe in systemic racism. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why you should talk to each other more often, because you discover that everybody is much messier and more complicated and interesting than you just suppose by reading hateful shit on the internet. Although there is a place for hateful shit on the internet, and I did not mean, I just like to apologize to that. A large portion of our viewers who will have been very offended. I spoke from ignorance, and I apologize for any harm I may have caused by my inadvertent and accidental offense at hateful shit on the internet. I am sorry. Now, neither of you, I'm afraid to say, and this is the difficult part of the interview where I'm going to have to say some pretty tough things to both of you. It wasn't earlier, Rodger. Neither of your positions is very popular. Rodger, why are libertarians, and I know that I asked you a question about ridicule earlier, but and you kind of gave me an answer that could apply to both, but try to produce something else. Why is libertarianism as a philosophy so unpopular? Because everybody kind of goes through this period of it in their youth, I suppose, and then they have a daughter and realize actually it'd be better if she didn't grow up to be a crack whore. So maybe there should be this, and this. So I'm not a libertarian. But taken out of kind of daily existence, like what about libertarianism? Not libertarians, but what about the system, the philosophy, fails to excite people? What is it?
I think I challenge that idea. I think libertarian is very popular. You take a look at Rand Paul and Ron Paul's campaign. I think people they tend to want to keep their money and they don't really give a shit what other people do if they don't care about them. I think that's generally the American attitude. Membership in the party might not be very popular. So I think that would just be my
those two things are not connected.
Unfortunately, no. We need to get more of them. Here's something else too I want to mention. Libertarianism faces a struggle in that it tries to be non-violent against violent competitors, and I don't always know that that's a winning strategy. I kind of agree.
So fucked. If you've got people who are prepared to draw a sword on you and you don't even have a sword, you're dead. Maybe it's that. Maybe people just realize it doesn't work. It needs
to be presented in strength. And
now I will say, in your defense, I will say that the Libertarian Constitution of the United States, because it is fundamentally a Libertarian Constitution, the Bill of Rights and so on, were intended for precisely the sort of society that I think that you perhaps hoped that you live in or wished that you lived in. The founders said the Constitution as a document and the various, what we've come up with is no good for governing lawless revolutionary populations. It wouldn't work in other parts of the world. This is for Americans. And those Americans at that time meant something quite specific. And it was for law-abiding Christian Europeans who, and the most important thing there is Christian, because everything flows from that. But what the founders basically did is outsource the business of morality to Christianity, so they could get on with all the other bits. And that's why, there's no religion in government, because they were all Christian and they never imagined that anybody wouldn't, right? Apart from a few weirdos. They never imagined for a second that the citizens wouldn't be Christian, because if they had, they wouldn't have devised this system. All of which is a long-winded way of saying you're not the first person in history to base their point of view on the hope that people will be non-violent towards one another and will fundamentally be good. I think the flaw in your philosophy is that it's conservatism with religion taken out. And the essential insight that you're lacking is that people are not fundamentally good. And they will not treat you as you have treated them. And they will be prepared to pull a gun on you. And if you don't have one, that's the end of the story. And that's why it just doesn't fucking work. Now, let's turn to James. Your friends, let's say, because your extended circle in the wider communist world, you are splitting this country apart. You are taking it from a healthy, happy, burgeoning nation in, let's say, for the sake of argument, I mean, you could say it fell a long time before that, but let's pretend we've got short memories. Let's pretend that we only remember a couple of decades ago. I'm just thinking about the beautiful hope that we all had for like a happy world in like the 90s. When you would watch you'd watch Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or something, and people just got along okay.
Clinton was signing NAFTA, a beautiful time.
When you look at the world that social justice and the social, let's say there's a flip side to communism, right? Away from the economics. When you look at the social consequences of communism, isn't it going in exactly the same direction in this country where where you guys have so much social capital, if not economic or political power? Isn't it going exactly the same way here as it has done in every other country in history where communism's ever been tried? People fucking hating each other and violence.
What I think has happened now is that you see the identity politics of leftism consumed by capitalism. That's why you see MasterCard sponsoring pride parades and shit like that. The identity politics has been totally boiled down to like consumer choices and shit like that. That's why you see leftists boycotting Harry Potter or whatever.
I do find that a persuasive argument, because I think it's true. Capitalism's great gift, what makes it such a formidable adversary, is it can kind of bend and contort itself around anything. It's like infinitely flexible, and it will consume just about anything, right? And make it part of its own thing. It's like we need a monopoly. We need a monopoly commission for political ideas, in which case capitalism would be very quickly reined in, right?
I think that's why you and I agree that whoever's going to win here has to use force, which the libertarians don't agree with.
Well, that's the problem, because I do agree with you that that's the case now, but I also add that your guys made it the case, and it didn't always have to be, and it was not the case until maybe 30 years ago. And I suppose really we're talking about the 60s.
You're not going to
really
punish
talking about
the guilty, we will.
Say again?
If you're not going to punish the guilty, we will. I mean, are you going to let Jeff Bezos continue running around on the planet?
I wish we didn't. And now building himself rocket ships to go to others if things get sour here.
We won't let them do.
Well, you got me there. Nothing has made me more completely convinced that we are headed. Have you seen that? Have you seen the movie Elysium, James?
Yeah.
with Matt Damon, I think it is. Nothing has persuaded me more that we are headed for an Elysium situation with the rich, powerful aristocrats on a space station and everybody else, toiling in the dust full of diseases. Basically everyone lives in like one big, huge DMV where they go for a room to sleep, a room to work, a room to be told they can't have healthcare, a room to be told they're not getting a driving license, and then they do it all over again every day, almost as filthy as a DMV.
I make this joke all the time that there's just going to be a raffle for who will be Elon Musk's slave on Mars.
Oh no! It won't be no! Don't be silly. You're not being imaginative enough. There won't be a raffle. He'll come down and choose.
All women.
Yeah. Well,
like Grimes.
Okay. Well, after we're all safe, since he obviously goes for corpses. Now, you're not responsible for that poisonous aspect of modern life, but you are responsible for a lot of the other nasty stuff. Do you think that? I'm looking everywhere and I'm seeing people just fed up with social justice, with the left's social policies in general, sick of it. I just saw this story about a school in New York. It's a $52,000 or $54,000 a year school, and the school is currently in a crisis and will probably close down because the teachers are holding it hostage, saying that they won't go back to work unless 12 diversity officers are hired. The entire curriculum is stripped out. You can put it all together yourself. The kind of thing that would have been a fanciful satirical imagination of mine like 2 years ago. Well, it's happening, and they're doing it now in New York. Do you see the sort of this might, James, be the high point of global communism? Would be that period between the 60s and 2020 in America, where they didn't persuade anyone on economics because they can't, because it's bonkers and they never have and they never will. But they got people on the social stuff for this glittering period. They actually nearly managed to take down the United States of America with this nonsense. Has communism peaked?
Let me use that example as the perfect illustration of what's wrong. That is liberalism consuming it. That's capitalism consuming it. You want to fight for people, a more diverse ruling class. I don't give a shit about that. I don't care if there's like more black billionaires. I don't care.
I only care if there's more. Poor people. I'd quite like to see some dirt poor high court judges. I'd quite like to see some. I'd quite like there to be a ban for 10 years on college graduates in all new government positions, including and possibly 40 years on the judiciary.
I agree that the intellectual gatekeepers that exist right now should be totally flushed out. They no longer belong in this system. They won't belong in any future system, no matter which one of us wins here.
Rodger, libertarians aren't prepared to flush people out in the way that their enemies so clearly are. So what's the... Stop it. Be nice. We've been very nice up until now. You can't sit there all skinny and sarcastic and then lower yourself to that. But yeah, why are libertarians... No, I'm just kidding. What's your solution then? Come on. This is your moment to prove me and everybody else wrong. How do you get these entrenched, elite, bureaucratic, busybody, upper middle class tossers out of running everything? Because as far as I can see, that class is growing, not shrinking. How does libertarianism do that?
Well, I want to go back to what we talked about force. It's not that libertarians don't believe in force; we just don't believe in initiating it. So if you walk into I have more guns in this basement than some countries. You know what I mean? So I definitely believe in force. This has to be defensive.
What countries?
Huh?
What country? Name a country.
This is a public broadcast, so I have my face on. I can't go into full details, but I appreciate.
I was going to say Angola, but they have fuck tons. It was the first exotic name that popped into my head, and then Angola. Okay, so it's the Proud Boy principle of fuck about and find out, right? So we're not gonna come for you, but if you swing for me, you get what you get. Is that more like it?
Yeah, and I'd like to volunteer one of my points to add on to James's point, because maybe our problem is that we aren't fighting back, and maybe it's time we solve that and change that.
Haven't they already swung for you? Perhaps not with their physical fists, but in a multitude of other ways. Isn't it time for the terrifying? Because libertarians are always telling me how macho they are. They're always telling me how many guns they have, that they work out, and all the rest of it. I've been to anarcho and regular libertarian conferences, and there isn't a single woman there. You will never see a woman at a libertarian conference. It doesn't happen. Anyone who is there is being paid to be there. And they're like constantly telling me, like, without me even asking, that they're so macho and they're so this and they're so that. Well, when are you guys? I mean, you're obviously some kind of defensive elite force that nobody knows about. When the fuck are you going to save the rest of us? When are you going to do it?
I guess I don't want to save everyone. I just want to save myself. So
you
I guess
want to save you, but yeah. That's the real truth about libertarianism,
that's the truth.
Isn't it?
Absolutely.
Fuck you guys. I just want a 20-foot fence and machine guns.
Correct. I mean, I don't have a desire. I do want to get this point in.
No compassion. Look, I know that James here wants every single other living human being to be trodden underfoot and squished into the ground to meet his own insane ideological aspirations. But you're in a way worse because you don't even care what happens to anyone. You won't even notice if they're dead. He wants to kill them all through his social programs, but you won't even notice if they're dead.
Maybe worse, but honest. And I give people the truth. You know what I mean? Maybe worse, but honest. Libertarianism isn't about a utopian society. We don't promise you anything but a chance to stand on your own 2 feet and prove yourself. And that's all you deserve.
Well, we've certainly seen plenty of examples of that from libertarians, haven't we? Sorry.
Let me say I have yet to tell
I can't help it. What?
Let me say I have yet to tell a lie.
No, don't worry. I was going to pull him up on that too. There was a heavy loaded. I think that you mean that people on the left typically are less honest than people on the right. Is that what you're trying to say, or are you saying that James is a big fibber?
Well, you know,
don't chicken out if you meant the second one.
I believe that it's a lie, whether it's intentional or unintentional. When you tell people that you can create a classless society through the state, which in and of itself necessarily creates a class division, you're lying to people. When you tell them that peace is war and all these types of things, you're lying to people and misleading them. And hopefully they don't find out the truth of the lie.
I should point out, just for the sake of accuracy, that comes from a fiction book, and not from any major communist organization.
But was a socialist cuck.
Has it what? What, James?
Orwell was a socialist cuck snitch.
Yeah, you do. One of the things that you will learn as you hang around lots of interesting leftists is that not a single person on the left has ever actually read Alinsky. It is exclusively read by the right. They've never. I mean, they might instinctively understand it and operate according to its basic principles, but it's not knowingly. They don't read that shit, and they all fucking hate George Orwell. Now, James, what's that?
I'll admit I'm a Stalinist. I'm a Soviet supporter.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about that. Stalinism did not come without its casualties, did it? And I want to know, on the one hand, you have this sort of libertarian selfishness and indifference to the success or failure of other human beings, and even indifference to their existence, to whether or not they are alive. And I suppose that you could be quite astonished and outraged by that, and sometimes I am. And sometimes I'm just playing it up a bit for the purposes of a debate like this. But it doesn't make you evil. I think it just makes you an asshole. On the other hand, you, James, would probably end up doing fucking appalling, like morally horrific things if given a little bit of power. How do you square that circle with the sort of constant talk about compassion and love and equality that you always get from communists, and the reality of the brutality and barbarism? I mean, way worse than Hitler in terms of body count and all the rest of it.
Okay.
Do you sort of is it collateral damage in building this great utopia on Earth?
Let me say, let's keep it in the scope of the Soviet Union as the example under Stalin. Okay, so under capitalism and the Industrial Revolution, over about, say, 50 to 70 years, the United States and the Western countries industrialized. Meanwhile, Stalin managed to industrialize his country in a period of like 10 to 15 years, while also moving factories during the middle of an invasion by the Nazis. What I think happens is you look at the casualties of capitalism over that period of industrialization stack up to this period of rapid industrialization, you find that actually capitalism has a higher body count, in my opinion.
Come on. Look, you can talk about, Pinochet or whatever, and you can talk about maybe a famine but you can't ascribe to capitalism famines that occur thanks to the misdeeds of petrochemical companies, which maybe should have been more regulated. But the
U.S. doing 50.
You cannot. Look. It's just. I like you, I do, but it is just fucking ridiculous to say that capitalism has a higher body count than communism. It's just stupid, and it makes you sound stupid because all the stuff that you have to stack up on the capitalist side is from private enterprises who perhaps should have been better regulated, but they were bad actors and they were not the state doing it, which they are on the left. And the other thing is that what these analyses, quote unquote, never take into account is the absolutely remarkable improvement in standard of living. And I don't just mean having nicer TVs from China. I mean like continents being lifted out of poverty that are in large part thanks to capitalism. It's just, and look, we can talk about, the knock-on consequences in colonialism and all the rest of it. But in terms of people who are shot, starved, genocided out, can you grow up and admit that communism has a high body count?
Look, I won't say it doesn't, but I'd say that capitalism rivals it, if not surpasses it. That's
okay. Well, I've already told you that that's stupid and makes you sound stupid. So we're not going to. I'm sorry. I'm afraid that's a point for libertarianism. I tried to help you. I really did. Okay, James. Worst way to die: gulag or helicopter?
At least I'd produce something in the gulag, right?
Excellent. I'm so glad you said that. Point for communism. Right. Very good. Very good. Look, I'm sorry, but he deserved that one. Rodger, there are a few communist states left. Somalia, I think, is still communist. I mean, it might not be this week since they have like 7 competing governments at any one time. But where are the remaining libertarian countries?
Generally speaking, the West. We can get into this purity spiraling of, there aren't capitalisms in Europe because they have free healthcare. So I don't believe there's a pure libertarian society, and I think existentially there never will be one. But I think generally the United States and mostly in the West, meaning Western Europe.
I asked him earlier, and I suppose I should ask you the same thing. Are you resigned to losing, but staying in the fight for reasons of honor, or do you think that there's some realistic prospect of achieving your goals on the horizon?
I think I'm doomed to struggle because, again, we don't believe in a utopian society. There will always be a struggle no matter what happens. There's no end goal. There will always be a struggle. There's always going to be someone who wants my stuff, whether it be organized or individual. So what we have is a voluntary system.
Point of view. I need to build a 20-foot wall and have a small country's arsenal in my basement, because other people are always going to want my stuff. I am sorry you have to wake up with that in your head every day.
I appreciate it.
It must be a great burden on you. I know. I don't think people are fundamentally good, but when it comes down to it, I suppose none of us do, because he wants to murder all the ones who don't agree to go along with it, and then change everything about everything that all the other ones do. So he probably can't believe that people are inherently good either. But you definitely don't. You are up there on a planet of your own. Okay. Has libertarian? Okay. James, I'll ask you first. Has communism produced anything useful?
I would say so. I don't think there would have even been a space race were it not for communism. Were it not for the Soviet Union putting something into space first, I don't believe there would have been a competition.
Interesting answer. Okay. You might also have said the AK-47. But that's an interesting answer, space race. Rodger,
it's something that benefited society in general.
Yeah. No, probably not. Rodger, has libertarianism produced anything useful?
I think it's produced the iPhones that communists make podcasts on, and I think it's produced the software we're looking at right now. And it's wonderful that people have gone to space, but libertarians produce solutions here in the market. All I want from fascists and communists is to be thankful for the products and services the market's provided.
Well, there you go. He got his big point. There you go. Fine. All right. I gotta give you one for that. That's what was that, James? Don't mutter. If you have something to say, then produce it for us. What were you going to say, James? Are you vaping?
These companies are all subsidized by the state. Facebook is subsidized by the state for spying on you. Google was subsidized by the state from its creation. I mean, these things are subsidized by the state. The state made these apparatuses, and they use them to fucking inflict more punishment on you.
And it's not a private company that went into space either, is it? First of all, I mean, they might be doing it now, but they're only doing it with taxpayers' money. I mean, Elon Musk is the biggest fucking welfare mom in the world.
He hasn't made shit.
Right. I mean, so thank you, James. You see, that was helpful. That's what happens when you don't mutter under your breath sarcastically, because everyone just assumes you're going to be regularly returning to the same kind of low-grade insult that you did earlier. And no, in fact, that's one of the most interesting points of the evening. Now, certainly it's true that these companies all enjoy massive state subsidies that make it almost impossible not to print money. So it's the situation in this sort of like late stage capitalism where you have the government and business intertwined with one another. It's a lot more complex than you paint it, isn't it, Rodger?
Yes, I think it is more complicated. Absolutely.
So it's not entirely completely fair to say what you said, but it's perhaps mostly true. Okay. James, what's your least favorite kind of person? Like on the political spectrum, who do you just find like really truthfully laughable and loathsome?
I think you'll agree it's the liberals. It's always the liberals.
No, we don't agree. I think it's libertarians, but they're just so fun to like. They say that they don't believe it. Look, I'm sorry. I never promised I was going to be a neutral moderator. I said a long time ago, I said that I was sort of, something like a libertarian, but then one of the things that makes them so bullyable is that I think that non-aggression principle is actually quite true. I think, they say, fuck around and find out, I've got a basement full of guns. But when it comes down to it, like in a debate, I mean, you, James, you look like a twig, but you've been spunky and stuck up for yourself and sassy. Whereas you, sir, with your arsenal, you kind of just like, every time I take a crack at you, it's kind of like, you sort of meekishly, sheepishly take it. And I think that might be part of the sort of attitudinal, constitutional problem with libertarianism, was it just encourages you to sort of run away from conflict. And that, to me, is a mark not of character, but of cowardice. Don't you think so?
I think that someone who's capable of defending himself isn't necessarily afraid of conflict. So if you have something to say, that's your point. And I don't need everyone to agree with me because, gentlemen, I'm very, very excited to be on your show. But I frankly don't give a shit what either one of you think. And I respect your right to say it. So if you have an opinion, well, that's yours. And I don't see what that has to do with me.
Well, that is the correct attitude to take, and thank you for it. Okay, we got to wrap up because we're running out. Okay, so we're running terribly over. I will have no news segment this week, but it's been very interesting, and I've liked you both enormously. I'm going to give you both an opportunity. It is still possible to win this thing for both of you. I'm going to give you both an opportunity with some last questions to dazzle the people at home and seduce them into looking you up and finding out more about your respective philosophies. What has been the consequence for society, negative or positive, of losing God, of religion basically being banished from the public square? Is the effect of that positive or negative, and what is it? James?
It's negative. I'm sure you're surprised.
Why do you do this to me? Why are you doing this to me? Why are you making me like you?
Listen.
Why are you doing this? You've come in here with an agenda. You thought, I know. I'll subvert the whole thing, and I'll make him bully the libertarian, and you've succeeded.
Look, the ideas of morality from what became European liberalism spread via Catholicism, and the same goes for down in Latin America as well. What became liberating values spread through the church. Religion is an essential part, and it's also important that I feel, you both won't agree with me, but I feel I make the moral argument. I feel that I do what is supposed to be done. I feel what I believe is right, that's right by any type of, higher power that you may believe in. You don't agree with that, and I understand.
Well, my two responses are: one, if you appreciate all the value that Christianity brings, You simply cannot be in favor of murdering other human beings for any reason whatsoever, except some kind of just war. And if you think we've met the conditions for just war, which are very strict and numerous, we haven't, unfortunately. And the other thing is, you're obviously not a communist. If you're, well, maybe you kind of want these values to be spread, and then you want to come in and like knock the church out and take over when people have been softened up, because you know that communism would never win in a barbarous society or something. But
here's the thing. I don't think I would be punishing people like my opponent tonight, man. I think the punishment comes for the people who
have come on, you'd take his guns. Wouldn't you take his guns away? You'd take Rodger's guns, wouldn't you? You would, because otherwise, when the cultural commissar came around to find out if he'd been reading the right shit and to see if he had any contraband substances or reading material, and he said, "You're not coming in or I'm going to shoot you," you wouldn't say, "Okay, well, let's respect his rights to believe in his own thing." You'd send a tank.
He's got the right to shoot. But listen, these are the things.
I suppose that's the ultimate end game of libertarianism, isn't it? Well, I've got the right to shoot you. Well, we've got the right to shoot you. We've got much bigger fucking guns. All right. Well, I find your callous indifference to human life to be supremely disturbing. Very chilling.
I think you have a different definition of what's just. That's all. We disagree on what is just based on the principles of Christianity.
Yes, I think so.
Which
that we
do.
I think that we do. Now, I'm not going to tell you, if you're listening at home, whether I'm awarding or subtracting points in this last section, because I want the final result to be a surprise. I know they're keeping score. Okay, so Rodger, shitposting rising to the level of bullying of the kind that I've been doing to you this evening have become commonplace on the right. Is that a problem?
Is it a problem? No, I think there's no such thing as bad exposure. And I think that, when people are bullying you and they're giving you ideas, it just gives you an opportunity to demonstrate them and show that they're faulty.
Maybe chemical weapons?
I pardon?
Or would be bad exposure, like chemical weapons?
Yeah, absolutely.
Pornography. Pornography, legal or illegal? Like hardcore rape porn, legal or illegal?
Legal. However, I do support the right of homeowners.
Child pornography, legal or illegal?
Absolutely illegal. And I would say
you're not a libertarian. Okay, fine. Right. No, it's fine because he's not a communist. Because no communist would talk as glowingly about the Catholic Church unless, of course, they owned it. Which, wait, they do. Right. Okay, you both confused me this evening. You're both doing your own bamboozling. All right. One more question each for you, and I'm going to let you go. I'm trying to remember what I had here. Let's see. Let's ask about neoliberalism, because that's the big system that you're both fighting, isn't it? What's the most morally corrosive aspect of neoliberalism? What's the thing about the cathedral, or whatever you call it, that elitist institution, architectural superstructure that I think all three of us agree is in place and shouldn't be? Rodger, what's the most morally corrosive thing about it? What's the worst thing it does to our souls?
It destroys your hope. When a working person has all of their funds taken from them, they can't buy product A or product B. They can't invest. They can't save. They can't give to charity. All those funds were taken from them and given to someone else. So it destroys their hope. And we need to give people their money back so they can have hope back, so they can dream and be a human.
I want to give people their money back so they can get their hope back, so they can dream of being human. I would like you to reflect on that this evening and just think about how truly awful a way to look at the world that is. That strikes me as supremely morally corrosive and disgusting. To say that to give someone their hope back, you have to put more money in their checking account is really the most appalling thing that I've heard in months. Now, James, the same question. What is the most morally corrosive thing that neoliberalism has done?
It consumes everything. It consumes your entire life. It consumes every aspect of your life to the point where you're ordering everything through apps, where you're isolated, you're atomized, you're completely alone in this horrible hell where you make no money, you work gig jobs, you do jack shit, and they patronize you. it consumes all life, and then it shits back out at you, Joe Biden or something like that, and tells you, you're welcome. It's disgusting. The whole thing is morally reprehensible.
I think it is. I think it is. Well, listen, I've loved our conversation, which has been very messy and unstructured and all over the place. But it was done in a way that people could kind of get a window into the two of you. And I think you both represent your respective positions quite well. And I'm very grateful for to both of you for coming on. And I'm ready now. I'm in a position to give you your scores. So on my very rigorous and scientific metric of laughing out loud, stroke, punching the air in my mind, stroke, hell yeah. I'm delighted to tell you that, first of all, Rodger, our Libertarian, has scored 4, which is a very creditable score because I'm a tough judge. And coming from Libertarian position, not easy to score anything. I am frankly astonished that he wasn't in the minuses. And our communist guest, James Carey, scores 5. So that is a win, I'm afraid, for communism. I'm sure that Gavin McGuinness will be delighted to hear that I have awarded a communist a win.
We won something.
There you go. See, isn't it nice when winners are gracious like that? You know,
we'll
that little self-deprecating joke at the end, and it leaves everybody else thinking, "Oh, wasn't so bad after all. What a nice guy. I'm kind of happy for him." We will give you this because you're never going to get anything else. You're not going to take over America. You're not going to take people's guns away. You're not going to refashion the world in this awful way you want to do. But I have to say, I'm also quite grateful that Rodger's not going to get a similar sort of power. Lest we all have our spiritual worth measured against the dollar. That would be scary indeed. Both of you, thank you so much for joining me. And audience, we have no time for news, but I hope you enjoyed that. God bless and good night.